Hi, my name is Alex Dolphin, and welcome back to another episode of Ex Ante. Today we're going to discuss the case of Pierson versus Post. This case was heard at the New York Supreme Court in the year of 1805. Let's go ahead and jump into the facts of the case. So, Post was hunting a fox with his dogs, and he began to pursue this fox. He was in hot pursuit with his dogs, trying to acquire possession of a fox. Pierson noticed that this fox was being chased down, so Pierson undercut Post's pursuit and seized the fox for himself. So he saw that Post was pursuing this fox with his dogs. He thought, well, I could get it faster than Pierson can get to it, so I'm going to go ahead and take this fox for myself. Pierson sued, arguing that he had property rights to the fox because he was the first one to pursue the fox. Post argued that the pursuit was invalid. It didn't matter. What mattered is who ultimately possessed the fox for himself physically first. So in the trial court, there was a ruling in favor of Post, saying that because he began to pursue the fox, he had property rights to the fox. Pierson appealed this decision, and that's why he's listed first in the case. And he argued that because he was the one who ultimately seized the fox first, he should be granted the property rights. So that's the decision that we're reading here, is that appellate decision in the New York Supreme Court in the year 1805. So the issue is at hand is whether pursuit alone can grant yourself property rights to a wild animal specifically, but this case can be applied more broadly to other principles, just property in general, whether pursuit of property is enough to grant yourself rights to that property, or whether you actually need to have corporeal possession of that property. So the court ruled in favor of Pierson. It overturned the ruling of the lower court, and it said that Post's mere pursuit of the fox wasn't enough to grant him property rights to the fox. Ultimately, it's the first person who has corporeal, physical possession of that fox, that wild animal, that is granted the property rights to it. So because Pierson beat Post to that physical, corporeal possession, Pierson was granted the property rights. The decision is interesting because the justice cites a lot of old philosophers of law from England in the 17th century, and then he also cites a Justinian treatise on law from ancient Rome. And that I just want to read. It says, and that's from the Justinian treatise, and it says, "Pursuit alone vests no property or right in the huntsman." So that's kind of what they cited. That was their argument in ruling in favor of Pierson, saying that the pursuit of the property alone was not enough to grant them the rights for that property. The court's decision was kind of interesting, and now we're kind of moving to the ex ante portion of the video. Is they raise a hypothetical in the court's decision that didn't really apply to Pierson versus Post. What the hypothetical that they raised is, if Post would have actually mortally wounded that fox, be it with like a bow and arrow or early version of a gun, if he would have struck the fox, in its shoulder, and the fox was just limping along at that point, does Pierson now have property rights to that fox? Because it's not just a mere pursuit, it was pursuit, and then he had deprived that fox of some type of its liberty, its ability to move around freely. The question becomes a bit more nuanced when you're looking at it from the angle of whether or not the animal was injured, whether there was some type of infringement upon that property, not ultimate corporeal possession, but some type of damage that was done to the fox. The court ultimately doesn't say how they would rule. If they would have said that, if Pierson would have shot that fox, mortally wounded it, and then, or if Post, would have shot that fox, mortally wounded it, and then Pierson would have came and undercut him and possessed the fox first, would Pierson still have property rights? They don't say what they would believe would happen in that case, but it's a discussion for the court, and ultimately a principle that can be adapted widely into property law is, it's not always black and white is pursuit or possession. There's often something in between. There's some type of a grasp at pursuit that's not ultimate pursuit of that property. So that's the question, and that's kind of what the decision of the court teases out, which is interesting. Some incentives that are negative from this case is that it kind of encourages people like Pierson to steal others' work. Post had laid the groundwork for this fox to be caught and killed. He had done that by pursuing it with his dogs, chasing it, and he had laid the legwork for that fox to ultimately be killed by Pierson. So it does incentivize hunters specifically. I mean, you could look at this more broadly, but let's just look at it specifically here. It does incentivize hunters to kind of poach off the work of other individuals, which I don't think we would see as a good thing in our society. Another reason why the court likely ruled the way it did was because it incentivizes less litigation. There's going to be less litigation if the court doesn't have to, worry about this hairy question of, were you in pursuit? How are we going to define pursuit? Was there enough pursuit to grant property rights? All they're going to say is, it's just the corporeal possession of that property, of that wild fox, that we're going to base the property right in. It's not in this vast, an undefinable term of pursuit, right? Because right now I'm pursuing a $10 million mansion, but I don't think anyone would say I have a property right to it, right? We're all pursuing something in the long term, but what level of direct pursuit would you need to claim property rights? And that's an issue that could give grounds to a lot of litigation. I think the court saw that, and that's ultimately why they ruled in favor of Pierson here, because of the ex ante implications that, we're going to have less litigation as a result of a ruling that focuses property rights on the person who has corporeal possession rather than on the person who has just began a pursuit. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.